Hopefully you have your Forces in Motion study guide out so that you can review with me the answers before you take the test. Also, please try and keep track of what you get wrong so that you can answer questions and ask me to talk more about something you don't understand. So if you don't understand it, highlight it, circle it, something so that you can ask questions before the test. All right, so you should be able to complete the following, and the first term is motion. So define motion. It's when an object changes position over time. Define frame of reference. It's an object used to define motion. All right, like if it's holding still and something else is moving. So speed is the rate at which an object moves. The formula for speed is speed equals distance divided by time. If a car traveled 25 miles in 5 hours, at what speed did it travel? 25 miles divided by 5 hours is 5 miles per hour. If a cat wandered 200 meters in 10 hours, at what speed did it travel? Well, 200 divided by 10 is 20 meters per hour. Be careful that you make sure that you use the right units when you answer speed and velocity problems. Velocity is the speed of an object in a specific direction. Really important you have that direction. The formula for velocity is just speed, so velocity equals distance divided by time in a specific direction. Velocity is different from speed because it also includes a specific direction. They have the same formula, distance divided by time, but velocity includes a specific direction. I'm going to move this up. All right, so we're looking at this particular distance time graph. What's happening at A? That's A. It's either stationary or at rest. Either one is fine, but there's no motion. B, there's constant motion, and B is slower than D because the slope is not as steep. At C, acceleration is happening because you have a curved line going upwards. It's acceleration getting faster. D, you have constant motion, okay, but it's also faster than B, again, because the slope is steeper. And E, we have returning to start. Remember, this is start, and so it's on the start line down here. E is returning to start. All right, let's look at the next page. So a force is a push or pull with size and direction. Net force is the force that results from combining all the forces on an object. The unit used to express force is Newton, and abbreviated with an N. Does movement indicate a balanced or unbalanced force? Movement indicates an unbalanced force. So the question is, what is the net force of A, B, and C? So A, the net force is 4 newtons down. 4 newtons left and right both cancel each other out, so you're really left with 6 newtons up and 2 newtons down. Oh, my bad. Going over this, it is 4 newtons up. 4 newtons up. Okay? And so B, 3 newtons up and 3 down cancels each other out. No motion up or down. 3 newtons left and right. No motion. So we have 0 as a net force. It's balanced. For C, we have 3 newtons to the left, 5 newtons to the right. The strongest force is to the right with 5 newtons, but so just 2 newtons, right? 5 minus 3 is 2 newtons to the right. Vector shows where force begins, the direction of the force, and the amount of force, all of it. Which law of motion describes inertia? That's the first law. I move this up. All right, so what force opposes the motion of an object? That's friction. It says, describe how this picture shows Newton's first law of motion. So this actual human keeps moving forward. So, sorry, I needed to pull that out a little bit. I went right to the edge. So this particular human is moving, and he keeps moving forward even because there's no unbalanced force, okay? But the bike stops. Because the box exerts a force that stops the bike. So this one, this guy continues to move with inertia. The law of motion that describes acceleration is the second law of motion. All right, I might need to zoom out a little bit here. Hang on, let me adjust our camera just a tad. There we go. Okay, starting at the top here. It says, describe how this picture shows Newton's second law. Let me zoom out even pen more so we can see. There we go. There we go. Okay, that's better. So Newton's second law of motion really talks about mass and force and how you need more force to move more mass, okay? So basically, also you have to have an unbalanced force in order to actually make something move or accelerate. And the more mass something has, the more force it takes to accelerate it. The law of motion that can be described with momentum is the third law. Describe how this picture shows Newton's third law of motion. Well, Newton's third law of motion talks about forces acting in equal and opposite pairs. So the finger is pushing the wall. This is the action force. And the wall is pushing back on the finger. This is the reaction force. Okay? That's part of Newton's third law. The law of conservation of momentum says the total momentum of any group of objects remains the same. So even if something happens, the momentum just changes from one object to the other. Nellie Newton holds an apple in her hand. If the action force is the earth pulling down on the apple, what's the reaction force? Well, if the action force is gravity, then the reaction force is her hand pulling against gravity, or pulling upward against gravity. If you use the same force on a less massive object, what happens to the acceleration? It increases, right? So if the mass is less, then you are using the same amount of force. It can go faster. For an object to accelerate, it must be acted on by an unbalanced force. Balanced forces produce no change in motion. Which has more inertia? Mrs. Tomlinson rolling down a hill, pretty picture, or a bus rolling down the same hill? Well, so same slope, right? But one has more mass. Mrs. Tomlinson is definitely not the same mass as a bus. She has less mass. So a bus will have more inertia because it has more mass than Mrs. Tomlinson. Thank goodness. If I was the size of a bus, I wouldn't be able to come to school and we'd all miss it. All right. Keep track of what you have to ask for questions and make sure you definitely ask before the test. Make sure you study your information. If you were unable to answer any of these, then you need to make sure you use your notebook, complete your notebook pages before you take the test because you can use your notebook on the test. All right, let's get moving.